our next speaker is visiting us from France. He is Mathieu Lemieux. Okay, I think it's okay. Fun fact is that before he started in tech, he was playing hard rock in a band. So he can talk about WordPress and music too. And he will be talking about Reactive. The title is From Reactive to Proactive, Modern Observability for WordPress at Scale. So a big round of applause to Matthew, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you hear me? Yeah? All right. So hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here and for taking the time to come in here. There's a lot of people. That's good to see a crowded room. So thank you for that. Yeah, thanks. So I want to talk about how you can be on top of problems on your WordPress website and how you can move from being reactive, waiting for someone to tell you, hey, there's a problem, you go there, you check, you fix, to being proactive about those issues. And to do that, we'll talk about modern observability techniques, especially for WordPress. Before we actually deep dive into this, just very few words about me. So I'm Mathieu Lemieux. I'm VP of Engineering at Group 1 in the WordPress ecosystem. So I lead technical and engineering teams working on WordPress products such as WP Rocket, Rank Mass, WP1, Imagify. If you're interested in any of this, just come to our sponsor booth. I will be happy to talk about those products, WordPress, Discord talk, whatever you want to discuss. We'll be happy to see you. And before joining the WordPress community and the WordPress ecosystem 2 years ago, by joining those companies, I was working in fintech. And back then, my boss always told me, hey, we're handling people's money. And you cannot do mistakes with people's money, right? It's super important. And so, and even if we make a mistake, we have to know exactly what that mistake is so that we can actually fix it quickly. When I joined the WordPress ecosystem, I had this in mind, right? And I figured that, okay, WordPress websites might not be as critical as, handling people's money, but a lot of businesses rely on those websites, and a lot of users go to those websites every day. So it's important that they just work as expected. And I realized that there might be some techniques and best practices from the fintech industry that could be applied to WordPress, but they were not always known. So I thought, hey, why maybe I should share that with the community. So that's why I'm bringing this talk to you today. So what we're going to do is talk about 3 strategies, tactics, approaches that you can easily use in WordPress to get on top of those issues, to be proactive. So we'll talk about error monitoring platform, database alerting, and automated visual regression testing. For all of those strategies, I will also try to come with examples and, most importantly, tools, free open source tools that any of you could use starting next week. Really easy to set up so that you can get started and start being proactive about those issues on your websites. All right, let's get to it. First topic is moving from logging to error monitoring platform. And why do I want to talk about this first is because when I joined WordPress 2 years ago, first thing I did was like, okay, let's spin up a WordPress website. And since I have an engineering background, I started tweaking it, of course. And quickly enough, I saw this, right? I think we all saw that at some point, right? And the first time you see it, it's you're really scared because it just says, hey, critical error, no more information. What should you do, right? So you go on Google or AI, whatever. It says, hey, it's okay, don't worry. You enable the logs, you'll be fine. So you do those WP debug log, whatever. And at some point, you probably start doing something like this, right? Where you start putting error logs a bit everywhere without any sense, just to see where you are. So you do like, hello, I'm here. Data initiated, but at some point you don't have any ideas what to put. So you do Toto1, Toto2, Toto3. Yeah, you're laughing. Who did that? Whoever did that? Yeah, some of you. Yeah, don't be ashamed. All right. I still do it too, right? But if you're lucky enough, then you go to your logs and all right, you see your hello, I'm here, data initiated, Toto1, Toto2. So hey, it kind of works. But already you start to see like weird messages you never asked for, like PHP notice, blah, 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 I don't know what this is, admin bar, yeah, I never asked for this, but okay. So here you're good, right? But that's because maybe you're on a local staging environments, everything's fine. But what if your issue is on a production website and you try to apply the same? In reality, what this will look like is most probably something like this. You get a lot of nonsense messages that you don't understand. All right, hello, I'm here, Toto 1. Okay, looking good. Ah, Toto 1 again, Toto 2. Hello, I'm here, Toto 1, Toto 3. The order doesn't make sense anymore. Because maybe you have multiple users doing requests and you're all logging in the same file. It's a complete mess. You cannot get anything out of this, right? And that's probably what happens in reality if you're trying to debug this way. What would we want to do based on this, right? We would like maybe to be able, instead of having one large file like this, maybe we would be able to group those logs by request, right? Being able to say, okay, that Toto 2 here belongs to this Toto 1 and kind of, put them by request together and group them. Or maybe we would be able to, we want to be able to say, okay, that like PHP noticed, is this that I didn't ask for? Is this related to any of the other messages? Is that in the same request? How often does it appear? Is it every day? Is it multiple times a day? Is this just a one-time thing? You would want to have all that data. Also, if you start doing logs like this, here you just have like Toto 1, Toto 2. You have no clue about like the variables or what were the values at stake at that moment, and you have to write logs every time, print this data, print that data. Oh, I forgot about this one, so you add another log and so on. So you would like maybe all of those information, all that context to be captured automatically, right? And of course, you don't want to have to write your logs every time. You would like all of this to be out of the box, coming to you right away. What you would want is something that looks like this. You would want this sort of interface, right, where each log line kind of appears here, but they're packed together. So you have like a lot of like index error, key error, but you would say, hey, how does that look like over 7 days? So maybe you want a graph that tells you, hey, that error for the past 7 days is frequent, but this one maybe appears like every day exactly at 6 a.m. And oh, this one happens like almost 700 times. This one, 70. So maybe this one's more important for now. So let's look into this one. And now you want to dive into like a specific example of one of those errors. So, okay, it's a key error order. Sorry, it's not PHP, by the way, but I guess you can follow. You want to see where in the code this is, like visually. And you want to know what is data, what is resource here. You want all those variables to come to you directly, right? Without having to ask for it. Just because there's an error, you want to know everything there. So all of this, right, is actually possible with tools like Sentry and Glitchtip. And what we just saw, and I'll come back to how you can actually get that, but we saw two different things here. We first saw like an aggregated view where for each type of error, type of logs, you get an aggregated view of what happened, how it looks like for the past 7 days, how many times it happened. So that allows you to understand how often it happens, maybe to prioritize. Okay, these things happen like 3 times for the last 7 days. Maybe that's an edge case. Let's not look into that for now. But this one seems like a big one, right? So that helps you prioritize what you should be looking into. And also start of identifying the origin, right? From there, this is happening by spikes, as I mentioned, every day at 6 a.m. Maybe that gives you a hint of what the problem could be. But this one is happening almost all the time, right? Consistently. So there are different types of errors. And then we saw a detailed view. For each of those errors, we're able to say exactly in the code where this is. And data resource was, oh, the value was order. This is why I have this key error order. And if I look at data, it looks like this. Oh, there's a 404 in WooCommerce message. So quickly enough, you can understand that, hey, maybe it's just that you're looking at WooCommerce orders and you didn't handle the case of a 404. So your code just expects the API path and it's not working. So in just a few minutes, you've been able to identify what's the problem. And you didn't have to write any logs and you just got that out of the box, right? So to do this, it's really, really simple, right? You have 2 things to do. First, you have to put something on your WordPress website to capture automatically those logs, errors, warnings. And the great thing, I don't know, stay alive, Alex Bouma, if any of you know that person, he's an amazing guy because he created this WP Sentry integration plugin. It just works. You install it on your website and it just does what I showed. It captures all the errors, everything out of the box. This is amazing. So super easy to configure and to get started. And then you just need a place, an app, to send those error logs somewhere, right? So the good thing is that Sentry and Glitchtip both have open source and or self-hosted free solutions, right? So you can just install that app on the server and all your logs, error go there, and you'll get the interface I just showed you. They also have like paid plans if you want to go deeper, but you can go a very, very long way with the free version. And the great thing is it comes with alerting features. So not only you get all that data, but you can also, you don't have to monitor that dashboard every day. You can just say, hey, let's send me an alert every time a new error occurs on Slack, Teams, email, whatever. So you don't have to care about it. It will just come to you when something wrong happens. And then you just have to spend a few minutes to understand what's wrong, fix it, and then you're done, right? So yeah, much more efficient than printing, hello, I'm here, Toto1, Toto2 in your code, right? Okay, moving on to the second approach, which is database alerting. So if we just think about what we just did with the first version, with the first strategy approach, we started capturing all the technical issues, right? The bugs, the errors, the warnings. So, and we've been sending alerts. So something maybe that looks like this, right? I was talking about those alerts. You can get them from Sentry directly into your Slack, for example. But what if you have a problem on your website that has no error? Let's imagine you have like an add to cart button on an e-commerce website. Maybe you update a plugin or a theme or whatever, and that button becomes non-responsive. Like you click on it, nothing happens. Maybe there's no error, just the button, it doesn't do anything. There's no error, there's no warning, right? So Sentry or Glitchtip, they won't catch anything. There's no code running, so there's no error. But you still have a problem, right? People cannot order from your e-commerce website. So here, we capture the technical things, but what about the functional things? What should happen, but does not happen? So it could be low number of orders on your e-commerce website, or abnormal number of users that registered or connected to your website, depending on your use case, right? That's not something you can catch with Sentry and the first approach. So, but the good thing is, all that data, right? The number of sales or orders, number of new users, number of connections, this is data you actually have in your database. So let's use that. This is an example of a SQL query that we actually did on one of our products, one of our WordPress websites. And when we plot the graph of number of users, new users registering every day, it looked like this. So you have like weekends, of course, then weekdays. And wow, what happened here? You could say, hey, great, a lot of new users. You're super successful. That's great. Well, actually, that was we released something that broke our DDoS protection. So someone was trying to DDoS us by just creating users, right? And there's no error in that, right? There's no error in the code. Nothing Sentry catches, but you actually have a functional issue here. But then, you have to write that SQL query, and then you have to plot and understand, what's going on. So again, you're being reactive. You're not really being proactive. So we just have to turn this into an alerting system. So what we would like to do is to have like a task that runs every, hours, every day or whatever, that checks a query, like how many users get registered for the past day. And if that number is not as expected, so if it's not between 300 and 800, then I want to receive an alert, right? You want this to be, you want to be aware without having to check. So you get an email, a Slack message, whatever. We are doing this with Metabase, again, an open source tool. It's just a tool that you connect to your database and you can browse it through a nice UI, right? And there's this no-code editor that allows you from a table to directly count by timestamp how many logins you had every day. You can, with no-code, filter this, like let's look at number of connections for the past 30 days. And on that use case, we get less than 10 every day. If you're advanced, you can also do it with SQL, right? You have the two approaches possible, SQL or no code. So let's say in that use case, hey, we never get more than 10 connections a day. Let's put a threshold at 10 and tell the tool, hey, if it goes above 10 one day, just send me an alert. Maybe in that case, it's because someone hacked you and is getting you're getting more connection than usual, something like that. So in just like a few clicks, right, you just set up an alert, and if someday you get more than 10 connections, you'll get a Slack message. And of course, you can do that with number of orders. If you have an e-commerce plugin, you can just count the number of orders for the past 24 hours and get an alert if anything is not as expected. Again, this is completely free and open source, at least for their community self-hosted solution. You just go to metabase.com. It comes with alerting capabilities, looks like that. So like here we had an alert about failed orders, number of failed orders compared to the previous day. So maybe something's wrong with the payment gateway or something like this. And as a nice addition with all the no-code approach, it's super useful for non-technical people in your companies to also use the data. So it's a kind of a nice bonus on the side. All right. So we saw a way to capture technical problems, technical errors. We saw a way to capture functional issues like number of orders and so on with Metabase. If you already have those two things, you're pretty well covered. Well done. There's one more thing I want to talk about because this is often impacting WordPress website. It's visual regressions. WordPress is great. You have a lot of themes, plugins. They're being updated very frequently. But I think we all have this thing when we're updating the WordPress version or the theme or a plugin. We're like, hey, okay, should I check all the pages of my website again just to make sure there's no small changes in the UI? So maybe you take the time. Most of us don't take the time to do it. And then after a few months, someone say, hey, by the way, the website is not as it should, and you don't know for how long it's been like that, right? So what you can also do is do visual regression testing. And the idea here is you define a test, a scenario. You say, okay, I want to check my homepage. I want to check it with, I don't know, a tablet or a mobile or a desktop if you have like a responsive design, for example. Maybe you want to also check what happens when I click on a menu or a specific button, right? You want to make sure that your main, your critical user path, your user journey is working as expected. You take a picture, snapshot, of what is expected of your current version. And then every time you do a change, well, you would have to go back and manually redo the same thing and make sure that your screenshot is the same, nothing changed, right? Super time consuming. If you have, if you're an agency with 100 websites, you update WordPress version, you probably don't want to do that on all your websites and check all those pages. So you can do all of that manually. Trigger alert. The next slide is super ugly. Sorry about that. But I just wanted to fit everything in one slide, right, to make it easier, but it's not nice. But yeah. All of that I just described, you can do all of that automatically super easily. It really takes like 5 minutes to set up using BackstopJS. So this is basically a tool that does everything I described automatically and that you can run, of course, freely on your computer or wherever you want. You just run those two commands. They just install the tool on your computer, right? And out of the box, it comes with this backstop.json. This is the only technical thing that you have to do here, is to define what you actually want the tool to do. So here in this example, I say, hey, my test, my scenario is I want a tablet, right? So you can specify like the screen size and stuff like this. And you say, the scenario is on that URL. So this is sandbox.local. So that was a local website I just spin up for the demonstration. And I just say, hey, visit this page with that and see how it looks. You just run backstop test so that backstop actually does that. And then backstop approve to tell it, hey, okay, what you just saw, the snapshot you just took from that test, that's now your reference. Keep it in memory somewhere. We will be reusing that later on. This is your reference. Now, for the sake of the example, I just did a dummy change, like I changed the H1 font size, right, just for the sake of the example. But it could be here, this step could be you update plugin, you update the theme, or you update the WordPress version, whatever change, right? And then you just run backstop test again. And now the tool automatically will say, all right, let's compare the first version and the new version. And if something changed, it will give you a report like this. You have reference, test, and diff. Diff, this view shows you like the pixel that changed. You can do the reference, the test. You see the size of the header changed. And you can see how it impacted the page. You have on the left the reference, on the right the test. Of course, you see the size of the font changed in the title. But you could also see, let me maybe play that again. You could also see that the buttons below the header, they change position, of course, because they were pushed by the new size of the header. Maybe this is not something you expected when you did that change. So this can also be a way for you to double check the impact of a visual change, right? Maybe those buttons that slightly change, right? And it's just this, right? You can run this on your own computer. You can run maybe this automatically every day. And again, it's proactive, meaning that if nothing happens, the tool will just not send you any reports. But if something breaks, if something changes, then you will get that report and you will quickly see what the visual impact is. And it's just a JSON file that you've been configuring for all your websites and pages. So you can be much more confident about updating a plugin or a version or whatever. I know that there are more and more services in the WordPress ecosystem that use stuff like that, right? Like managed WordPress solutions where they update the plugins automatically. They run a test like this one and they roll back, for example, when they spot an issue. So it's great because this is, I'm not sure exactly what they're using. I guess it's some flavor of BackstopJS, but this is something we're starting to see more and more in the ecosystem, and I think that's a great thing. So, as a summary, we've been seeing three different things, right? Error monitoring platform with Sentry and glitch tip that you can use to catch technical issues. Data-based alerting that you can use to catch functional issues, right, based on your data. And finally, automated visual regression testing for everything UI related and front-end related. Just so that you understand the importance of this, I just want to share one number that we see across the tech and IT industry. There's a lot of studies from Microsoft, GitHub, or well-established tech companies, right? They don't exactly agree on the number, but the idea is that once you have a defect, a bug, friction on your website or on your app, only 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 30, depending on product, 1 out of 20 people only will report the issue to you. Like send an email, send a support ticket, so every time you get a support request or a client calling you, say, hey, my website, someone reported the website doesn't work or something like this, it probably means that already 19 people that faced the problem, but they never, took the time to talk about it. And think about it, right? When you try to order something online and it doesn't work, you most probably just move to the next online web shop that you can find, right? You don't take the time to write a support ticket and so on. So everyone's like that. So if you're being reactive, if you're waiting for someone to tell you, you probably lose 95% of the users that face the issue before that. So that's a lot. So this is why you really have to move to a proactive approach. And I really hope that those techniques, you saw that they can be applied very easily with open and tools. So yeah, please, let's all use that maybe starting next week. Start to think about how we can apply that to your businesses or your use cases. And let's make the web a safer place and a better place in the end. Thank you very much. And I think we have a few minutes for Q&A, if some people have some questions, right?
Yeah, we have some minutes for question. Please, John, there's a person.
most WordPress websites are managed by some authors or bigger author teams. So a change in the content, for example, new products on the product page or a new blog article, would lead to visual regressions as well. What is your recommendation for this? Because if you exclude the complete item page, you wouldn't get bugs on this page.
Yes.
And if you exclude the specific HTML element for the blog list, obviously the blog list would also be hidden.
Yes, so indeed, this is one of the main, I would say, friction for automated visual regression. It's that you have to specifically identify what to take into account and what not. Usually what you can do is that everything that's like really content related, right, like how the text look like, you can maybe exclude that, and maybe what you want to focus on is maybe your menu or your banners, or like the most impacting things. And then, as you saw, it's really easy to update, right, meaning that if someone changes the visual aspects of your website, you can just run, again, backstop approve just once, right, to update the reference. So it's really easy to do. I guess it's a fair trade-off to just get a warning, say, yeah, something changed. That's expected. I just do backstop approve, and it kind of validates the change. So I think it's a trade-off, but I would recommend going for it. And then you can do, some specific exclusions. But yeah, that's the limitation here.
Thank you. We have one there.
Yeah, great presentation, thanks. And I would like to ask about the performance of Sentry, because like I understand, this plugin is sending the request to Sentry system in the same request when the client occurs the error, on the site. So the client needs to wait to send the request to Sentry, and then the page will be rendered to them. So this is very slow, and the performance is shitty. So it'd be better, maybe there is a solution, to grab the errors somewhere in the config file, in the log file, for example, and then send some part of the errors to Sentry in other process.
Yes, totally. So this plugin, actually, if you look into what this plugin is doing, is just wrapping up Sentry SDK. So there's something developed by Sentry. It's super optimized. Of course, you have some impact on performances, but it's catching errors. So do you care about performance if there's an error and the user don't see the website anyway? So but we're running that on most of our websites. We don't see an impact on performance. Especially now, if you're using some caching plugins or things like that, right? What you actually care about are more like maybe your background tasks, or when the cache updates, right? So it's not even user-facing. When PHP is running, more and more it's not user-facing. It's more background processes, and then the user gets like the computed version from a cache or something like this. So overall, again, I think it's a trade-off, but I think it's a really good one to take. We haven't seen performance issues with that plugin. It's super optimized in the way it's running. I'm not aware of any solution, but I think that's a good idea that you have, right, to kind of offload this to an async process. I'm not aware of any solution doing that out of the box, but maybe there are. I don't know. But in my experience, we haven't monitored any performance impact, and again, the benefit from this were pretty huge. So, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, quick question. Regarding the visual testing, there is, as I understand this, there is a configuration for the test to be run and what to expect. And I'm curious if you can automate this, because this looks like you have to write a test, and then if something changes, like the previous, like with the previous question about the content, for example, that breaks the layout, for example, maybe the idea would be to automate the update of the tests, like with AI, for example, so you can AI generate the the long and boring stuff of writing the test, and then execute this before and after plugin updates, so that because a lot of times something breaks when you update the plugin. So maybe this is the idea, and I'm curious how you do this so that it is not a boring, long time, a lot like manual and boring stuff to do, and because this is why you might not want to do that, right? Because it takes time. So I'm curious, what do you do to make it faster and more maybe automated? Is there anything you can share?
Yeah, definitely. So it's not something that we completely do everywhere, but the approach that we're trying to take on this is, as you mentioned, when there's an update in content, you don't want that to run. But if there's an update of a plugin, of a version, this might be like the critical moment. So if you're into like CI/CD and maybe you deploy your websites and your updates through some sort of control workflow, maybe that's the moment where you want the automated test to run, instead of having it daily, as I mentioned during the presentation. So what you can do is, before deploying an update in your CI/CD, you take the approve thing, like the reference snapshot, then you roll out the update, and then you do the second one, and you put that into a workflow like a CI/CD deployment thing, rather than having that running daily, right? So that for most advanced users, this is probably the approach that you can take, and we are using that in some of our CI/CD, and it works just fine. Yeah.
Thank you. I have two important announcements before. But before you go, I will to thank Matthew for his talk on behalf of the WordCamp team.
Thank you.
WordCamp Europe team. So this is for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.